All right, today we're going to tackle something huge, a belief that's at the core of our modern world, systemic equality. But what if it's not the noble goal we all think it is? What if it's actually a mirage? Let's get into it.
You know the story I'm talking about, right? It's the one we're all told, the promise that's supposed to make everything fair. It's a really familiar story, but today we're going to pull back the curtain and see what's really going on.
So, the basic idea, the one that everything else is built on, is that for capitalism to be fair, it has to be like a race. And for any race to be fair, everyone has to start at the exact same line. In this case, that means everyone should, in theory, start with the same amount of wealth. Sounds great, sounds just, but wow, the implications of that are enormous.
And this is exactly why that starting line is so important. The argument goes that if you don't have it, the whole system just collapses on itself. It's like a domino effect. The people with a head start, they don't just win, they start changing the rules of the game. They can corrupt the market, snuff out any competition, and end up with control over everything from the news we read to the schools our kids go to. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
But here's where we hit our first and kind of major snag. The source we're looking at asks a really simple, but honestly a really powerful question. Has this perfect equal start ever actually happened? I mean, ever. In any society at any point in history? It kind of forces you to stop and wonder if we're all chasing an idea that's never been real to begin with.
And that question, well, it opens up a whole can of worms. It leads us right to this massive problem, the paradox of power. Let's just say we all agree things are unequal and we need to fix it. Okay, who's going to do the fixing? Who gets to enforce this new equality? Because the second you try to answer that, you create a brand new problem.
Okay, so let's walk through this cycle because it's pretty wild. First, we all agree, yep, things are unequal. Second, we say we have to mandate equality to make it fair. But step 3, that's the catch. You have to give some person or some group the power to make it all happen. And what does that powerful group do? Well, they impose their version of equality based on their beliefs. So you don't actually get true organic equality. You just end up with a different kind of unequal system, one that's been forced on everyone else. And look, let's just be real for a second. The people who are already winning the game, the ones with all the money and influence, do they really have any reason to want to reset the score? The simple, kind of cynical truth is they have zero incentive to create a truly equal system. Why would they? The current one works out pretty great for them.
So if it's a nightmare to put into practice and the people in charge don't want it anyway, maybe we should ask an even bigger question. The source pushes us to wonder if this whole concept of equality is even, well, natural. Do we see anything like it out in the real world, in biology and nature?
This is where it gets really interesting, right? On one hand, you have the story we tell, that we're all equal. But what's the reality? What do we actually see around us? We see incredible diversity, uniqueness. No two things are exactly alike. Instead of some rigid, universal standard, what really makes us work together are flexible agreements, just common sense. And maybe the biggest thing is, we don't have some grand system of equality, but we do have empathy, that amazing ability to understand each other even though we're all so different.
And this leads us to what is maybe the most provocative idea in this whole breakdown. If equality isn't a realistic goal, and it's not really a natural state of being, then what in the world is it for? Well, the source suggests it might just be a story told to the masses for a very specific reason.
Yeah, this quote just hits the nail on the head. The argument is that the powerful keep this idea of equality alive to give everyone else the illusion that the game is fair. It makes us feel like there's a real prize out there, a social stake that's worth fighting for, and that keeps us all playing along.
And there it is. That's the punchline. Equality becomes the carrot on a stick. It's this thing that's always just out of reach, something we're constantly told to chase. And that struggle, the fight for equality, becomes the very thing that keeps us distracted from what's really happening.
Because think about it. While everyone is focused on chasing this ideal, this carrot, the source claims that the real gap, the one between the general public and the centers of power, it just keeps getting wider and wider and wider.
Okay, so after all that, it's pretty easy to feel like, wow, is the whole idea of equality just a scam? Is it totally useless? Well, not quite. This is where the argument takes a really interesting turn. It suggests that equality serves a different, but maybe even more important purpose.
The key here is to think about equality a little differently. Maybe it's not a finish line we're supposed to cross. Maybe it's a moral ideal. You can think of it like the North Star. You're never actually going to reach it, right? But it's an absolutely crucial guide. It gives us direction, and without it, civilization would be lost.
Its value isn't in being achievable, but in pointing the way.
But, and this is a big but, for this ideal to actually do something, for it to be more than just a nice story that people in power can use, one thing is absolutely essential. That relationship between power and the public has got to be rebalanced. It needs to be closer, more in sync. If that doesn't happen, the ideal just stays an ideal, a tool for debate, or worse, for manipulation.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If we accept that this idea of perfect systemic equality is a mirage, something we can see but never touch, then what are we all running towards? What's the real finish line? What should we actually be aiming for? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.